What cultures do I feel safest around? Well, black and white and Asian are not cultures, those are ethnicities, but there are various cultures within each ethnicity, uh, and every individual brings something different from each ethnicity. But um, so the biggest cultures in America, where I'm from, is black and white, still, as far as I know. But most of my experiences are with black and white folks. I like Chinese restaurants, and I've met the people who work there are always friendly, quiet, and never caused any problems that I've seen. But I have run into, in my lifetime, uh, two Asians who were perceived as dangerous. One was screaming and yelling, and that was a woman hating on men. Probably somebody that the Democrats trained. And that was in a public place. The person was yelling at everybody. Other than that, I've always seen friendly Asian people. And one other time, I was in a gangster area where there was an Asian gangster who had threatened me, actually. But other than that, I know. So there's a variety in every culture, but who do I feel safest around? Well, here's the funny thing. Let's go with black culture, because I've been around black culture more than I've been around white culture. I guess you could call it half and half. But social life-wise, I've been around black culture more. Church-wise and different things, I've been around white culture more. And of course, my family's white. So when I visit family, I'm not visiting a black family. I'm visiting a white family. All right. So, and I'm talking about blood family, brothers, sisters, parents, cousins. So I had been married to a woman who is half black, half white. But anyhow, frankly, that didn't last real long because of partying too much, frankly. But so in black culture, I don't know if I wanted to. Everybody's missed the point now. I'm at 2 minutes. I've been around people who, if I'm not smoking something, then they're thinking I'm the police, and they may start threatening me and put a hit on me. Or just not because they think I'm police. They figure out you're not police, but then they want to hurt you because you're not smoking. They think you could be a snitch or something, telling them for doing their stuff, right? And so that's around cultures who are promoting drugs, right? So that's part of it. But and that's American blacks used a lot of times. Sometimes it's Haitian gangs or whatever. But it's, I don't always know who's who. But anybody who's dealing drugs and all that kind of stuff, that culture, that's become a culture. You think it's not just a culture, but it's actually a culture. It's not just an illegal dealing group. They don't look at it that way because sabotage laws, because it's so prevalent, I think. But there are those. But if it's Jamaicans, black Jamaicans, they see me smoking something, then they're the opposite. They're critical. They may say, get a job or something. And they're very work-oriented and have a lot of ethical, moral. They have a high moral standard, right? So I've seen Jamaicans who are a little overly critical in a sense. They do stereotype people like that a little too much, I think. But sometimes it's helpful because the crowd who is promoting drugs and all that are bullies too. They'll be bullied. Like I said, they'll threaten you if they think you're not, just because you're not smoking. They think you're a cop. Of course, plus I'm white, so there's those, and they're racist. And then there's the other ones who they'll think, okay, well, he's not a cop, and but he's not smoking or anything with us, so we got to be. We can't be friendly to him. We got to think he's one of those Karens or something, right? Just because you're not smoking or doing drugs or whatever. So, because they're bullyish that way, and it's not fair that they do that to people. I understand that the rules aren't necessarily fair. That would have a drug user arrested and stuff like that. But actually, there should be rules for dealers, they should have a license because to check to be regulated for poison, uh, being a predator, like isolating people, extortion, stuff like that. That's real big in the drug communities. So so when it comes to white gangs, it didn't used to be as prevalent, but I've seen more white gangs in recent years. And so I'll say this: this is a different topic about just being violent. For the most part, when I've run into some black cultures involved in that stuff, I guess you want me to finish my point about Jamaican. But it's helpful for the Jamaicans sometimes when they do the stereotyping. A lot of times, more so than in white culture, most white cultures, they'll listen to some admonition. It doesn't matter where it comes from. If it makes sense, if it's wise, it's cool. But there's a lot of more black gangs and stuff that if a white person speaks, they're not really allowed to speak. And if they say something that makes sense or is for the safety reasons, you can't do that. Don't speak, white boy. And they'll threaten you and all that over that kind of thing. You have to be silent. You have to give them full respect and say, basically, act like yes, master to the black gangs. If you're a white guy, a lot of times you got to be like yes, master, unless you're part of their gang. And that's so I've seen some white folks be part of a gang or have some what do you call it, rank amongst them, and that has to do with gang stuff, not ethnicity as much. So, but in the white culture, so I forgot where I was going. So I'm going to change gears here. Who's the most violent, though? Like if you see people, who's going to hurt an addict, for instance, with a white culture, injure and harm and maybe kill an addict, somebody who's considered an addict, quicker than a black culture. The black culture is more friendly. They just, a lot of, it's not the whole black culture, but parts of the black culture out there will, it's like their job to get somebody's money, and they look at it as a hustle and not stealing. If you let your guard down, that's your fault. And they know, but it's really a lot of white cultures that create that system. See, that they create a system that says if somebody's using drugs or something, it's okay to, that's their fault if they get robbed. They do that. And so a lot of the dealing gangs in black culture, which I think the white cultures did drop drugs into black neighborhoods, and that's why this has come about this way. Why this trend it does happen there in those circles, in the drug dealing circles, and it's more stealing. They think it's okay to steal because they've also been taught by the Democrats that it's okay to steal, it's no big deal or whatever. But the Democrats demonize the drugs. The Republicans now sound like the demonizers of drugs, but they bought the lie of the Democrats, and they have hypochondria. So this is a complicated subject. I didn't want it to be a long video, but the fact is, it's not racist to cite that there's different cultures. You're not allowed to talk about these things and to solve these things, and the truth is people should be able to talk, and I think you got to present stuff to give people an option. You can't just always tell them no, don't talk religion, don't talk politics, don't talk psychology, don't talk anything, and then they get to do whatever they want, and they do so. Don't give them a conscience. Don't tell them it's wrong to steal. Don't tell them it's wrong to kill. So people don't know. I mean, that it's bad to steal. They don't know. They just know that it's bad to do drugs, but it's okay if we catch somebody who uses drugs. It's okay to steal from them, but we can deal it, and we're not as bad as the people who use it. So that's the kind of the inference. We're just dealing it and making money and trying to be responsible, more responsible with money than that stupid addict over there. That's kind of how these dealers look at it. But in the end, in the black cultures, when it comes to the drug dealing cultures versus the white drug dealing cultures, a white drug dealing culture person, they'll look at an addict, and they might even be a predator that tries to get them high or drunk or whatever, and they want to see them act like a fool so they have an excuse to kill them. And the black culture, gangster cultures, for the most part, there's some of those types in the black cultures now too, especially more now than there used to be. But for the most part, in the black culture, they're just trying to make some money, and if you act like a fool, they're not stupid. They know that it's not all of them, but they know some people, they're going to act dumb when they're drunk and say stuff that's not out of the ordinary or whatever, and they were just drunk, that's all. And they'll protect a person's life a lot of times. That's that they might hurt them by taking their money, but they're not out to kill them, not out to hurt them for the most part. Now that doesn't mean it's so for the most part, because so who do I feel safer around? This is black and white. I told you about the Asians. I only run into 2 Asians in my lifetime that were kind of rough. Now Hispanics, I've run into a few rough Hispanics, but that was drunkards. I'll say amongst the Hispanic communities, there's various cultures within those realms. And I'm speaking about these instead of, I don't have time to talk about religious cultures. Okay, how's the black religious cultures in general compared to white religious cultures? And so I'm not breaking down Islam. And so I will say Islam has had a negative effect on black cultures because they turn it into a racist thing and say, they try to teach that Christianity is a white man's religion and Islam is a black religion. And it's not even, that's who started that lie. I mean, because Arabs are, Islam is not a black religion, it's an Arab religion, first of all. So, and it's a false religion. It's not, there's no proof of a second life in that religion. There's no God that proved the power of a second life like Jesus did. Jesus pretty much canceled out all religions as being false until they proved they can rise from the dead and then ascend up into heaven. And then they showed love on the cross, which in hindsight proves he could have come off the cross, but he stayed there because of love for people. All right. So, and to give us that evidence, right? So there's only one true religion. So I don't mean to go on that subject, but I'm saying I'm not going into that subject. I'm just talking about in general, who have I felt most dangerous around? If I'm in a gang culture community, I'm threatened by white gangs, frankly. And so, like, if you get in a fight, now I will say, though, if I'm going to fight, if somebody's threatening to fight me and I was to do it, and the black cultures, generally, they're more racist than white cultures from this standpoint, they're going to not give me a fair fight a lot of times. And then some of them are going to force me into a fight if I were to claim they're not going to give me a fair fight. They want to force me into one, and I still don't trust it. I've been around that. And so, I'm a person who tries not to fight, stays out of fights at all costs, but I've used diplomacy. That's worked pretty well for me most of the time. But if it comes to a fight, I think there's more. I've run into more white people, I think, who would give me a fair fight and would not pull a knife out. But I've also seen white cultures, maybe within the gang cultures, I've known white folks to just straight up stab you. No, as soon as you talk fight, they stab you to death. I've seen that. So it goes from one extreme to the other, but for the most part, if you're in any kind of community with white folks, if there was going to be a fight, I would trust them to give me a fair fight. In other words, one-on-one. But it depends, though. If you just attack somebody, if you assault somebody, which I don't do, never assaulted anybody. But, so my slate's clean on that. I'm not saying I'm perfect, but as far as hurting people, I've been good on that when I've understood that from the Bible to keep that under control. But I have a problem with eating, and I've had a problem with, if you want to know my problems, with getting depressed and looking for love in the wrong places. So not knowing not finding a soulmate. I'll put it like that. So and now today, at my age, I just turned 53. I've gotten so busy doing projects that I want to do and stuff. I wouldn't want to date somebody that would take me off of those kind of things. And so it's really hard to figure out who do you mix with. And there's other things in my life too to make it a hard choice. I'm picky. But anyway, my life circumstances, being in a situation where I've been robbed a lot and never felt like I recovered financially from it, stuff like that. And some health issues and things. So, at my age especially. But, so it used to be like, how dare you date somebody? What if you died or something? Da-da-da-da. I have this weird, it's always been all this pressure for dating. I don't mean to go off on that. But now that I'm older, I'm like, okay, now I have less time to live, and there's probably a better chance that if somebody matches me, they're not worried about, they're not going to judge me because I die before they get to enjoy being around me a long time. But I used to feel like if I'm young and I can't date somebody, if I can't guarantee I won't die sometime on them, you know. And it seems like everybody that's ever told me how to date or wanted to suggest who I date or wants to qualify me to date somebody, I don't know what it is. There's always been a challenge there. Somebody tell me you're not good enough for her or whatever. And that might be a guy doing it a lot of times. It can be their family doing it. It can be whatever. But, or I've even had gangsters act like they're a better material than me for dating somebody. And then they keep their women and pimp them out or whatever. It's how are they better than me for a woman? Anyway, but, so that's them protecting their income. But okay, so that's within cultures too. So I've seen that in black and white cultures. That part with women because I'm multicultural. I've been around rich people in my life. I've been around poor people. I've been around the ghettos. I've been through homeless shelters. I've worked in the Jane Fonda's house once a long time ago. I've been around, man. So I've seen all cultures, and I've made it a point to be cross-cultural because of my belief in Jesus, right? And so everybody wants to judge me for putting myself in danger and knowing other people, and they're, in politics, you used to hear them on TV say, how do they know this person? I'm thinking, how do you not know people if you cross paths with people? How do you not? I don't know who I'm running into, and I say hello and hi, and it could be some killer, somebody who just killed somebody, but I just said, hi, how you doing? I just saw them, shook their hand maybe or whatever. It's good to meet you. I don't know who they are, but so I'm that kind of person. But I'm not into shaking hands much. I'll fist bump or whatever. But I will. Some people want to shake hands. I'll shake hands, as long as I didn't just pick my nose. Just joking. But anyhow, I didn't mean it. Don't think of that when you come to see me. Mostly these are not in there, but I'm not a comedian anyhow. So white cultures generally would be more diplomatic and not fight. But I will say there's more racism that I've seen in black cultures than white cultures. All right, way more, far more. But it has to do with a lot of influence. The biggest influence I've seen, people coming out of prison and different stuff, and somehow they get radicalized in prison by Islam in the black cultures. And even now the white cultures are being taught the same thing. So the black kind of gangster types or somewhat religious types mixed in. And so the gangs, they don't call themselves gangsters. It's almost like they run gangs in a sense, or dealing groups a lot of times, and they're mixing it in with dealing. Drugs are okay with that, but they can talk bad about addicts and stuff like that. Anybody who acts like a fool or doesn't spend their money right, but then they're always wanting somebody's money. It's all confusing to me. But anyhow, I guess it kind of depends. So what cultures do I feel safe around? Religious cultures that are holier than thou types, and people who have never drunk a beer in their life, have a perfect resume, never missed a day of work in their life, never had an injury, never gone to the hospital, never had to go to the hospital once. I broke a bone and I just kept on working. Never ridden a bus in my life. I've seen a white person who's always trying to sell drugs claiming, or he's always trying to get people to do drugs with him. I've seen him claim that he's never ridden a bus in his life, and judging people, hating on people for riding the bus like it's a low class thing. The bus gets you somewhere pretty quick, if you're on foot. In a big city, sometimes it's better than traffic. Maybe in New York. Anyway, I guess if you're riding a bus in New York, you're going to be in traffic still. But so I've known people from New York. I haven't been there. I know people from New York who never had a car before, though, and that's kind of normal for a lot of people up there because it's so crowded. It's bad traffic. It's better to walk. The train works pretty good for traffic wise. So But in a lot of places, you don't have a car. That's a big deal. So I've seen there's all kinds of things you see from different individuals within different cultures, and but the common denominator is people should think about life and death. We should be able to we should be able to have teaching and be able to talk about don't kill people, don't hurt people, walk away. If you can't get along, you walk away. Those are basic things we should do. I mean, our drug laws are a sabotage system. They've demonized, and religious people fall for it, but they've demonized God's natural plant medicines and made them outlawed them, and then put the strongest forms of them in the street, and that's hypocritical by the science part of the science community, which might have been evolutionist, which is really a lot of people agree it's just a religion. It's not a science. Evolution is. It's a belief. There's no evidence of it since the time of the flood, Noah's flood. We all came from Noah's family after the flood. The people that wrote the Bible were not monkeys. They weren't Neanderthals. They weren't apes. They weren't tadpoles. It was people that wrote the Bible. So there was no evolution back then, way back then. And that's the beginning of the Bible was written about, I'm going to say 5,000 years ago, maybe. That's just a guess, all right? But that's not real long ago. And these fake scientists talk about tens of millions of years ago and all this. Well, we didn't have any writings after the flood. The flood might have been 8,000 to 10,000 years ago. So of Noah, and that would have destroyed almost most writings in the earth, right? So most writings came from after the flood, So, and they were protected, and that's part of why they have the Jews, the chosen people. That's to protect the writings of the Bible. And then once Jesus came, the Jews and Gentiles were allowed to mix after that. So He kept them separated, I think, to protect the writings of the Bible. I think that's why. It doesn't say that specifically, but it kind of indicates it. It kind of shows it. I won't say it indicates, but it shows it. So there may be some specifics said about that, but you can see it. I mean, you can see in the timeline and everything, when God allowed people to be with Jews and Gentiles, that was after He rose from the dead. And He said, "It is finished," on the cross. And so the whole Old Testament was written talking about Jesus coming and stuff, foretelling of Jesus coming, especially in Isaiah. You see that. But you even see it some in David's Psalms. I forget those key places. I don't have a great memory for all that, but I do. It's funny. That's why sometimes I'm like, why should I study? I'm not going to remember it. But I've summarized the Bible. I've simplified things down to common denominators in my life and stuff, and so I do pretty well with that. And I actually found that people who memorize and can learn all this stuff, they do it and they pass the grade, and they're like, okay, hurrah, I did it. I memorized something else. I can take his subject and teach it. He brought out all these good points that I bring out on certain things, which are just key fundamental points that people overlook, even the smartest people, memory-wise. They could take it and teach it better than I can, and think they just got the A+ for how they taught it. They don't realize but they don't realize a lot of times, not always, hopefully they learn to realize the value of it. They don't realize the value of it, that these root things that I talk about are what people use to lie the most about. Like when they falsify racism, and they don't tell you that we all came from God, Adam, and Eve, and from Noah's family after the flood, but the people calling people racist don't believe that. And so they're the real racists. And they're lying and they're tricking everybody about who's racist while they sit there and steal from, in America, they're lying to black folks about who's racist, and then they steal from black folks by bringing in illegal immigrants, because they call that racist too, when you don't let terrorists and when you don't let fentanyl in. And so they're mad. And so people overlook. It's weird how people can say it's okay for them to bring fentanyl in to kill people everywhere. And they don't think that's a big deal. And then they hate on Republicans, acting like they're racist or stuff like that. Like they're inhumane for sending illegals out of our country. It's a matter of principle. I know some of them aren't, they get adjusted, and it's like, it's nice they got adjusted if they're doing well. But But if you let illegals in, that allows any illegal to come in, like a fentanyl dealer. That allows a terrorist to come in, and that was actually probably part of the goal of the Democrat Party. That's how bad they are. The leaders, they knew, they actually coordinated, probably with Venezuela, or they didn't care that Venezuela coordinated sending all their prisoners here and stuff. They're serial killers and everything. They let out of prison to come to America. So they're drug dealers, they're serial killers. I don't know if that's dry skin or hair sticking out. But, so I guess I'll bring this to an end. It's the thing when you talk about these cultural things and ethnicities, I wanted to bring up, it's just, we're ethnicities because God changed the language at the Tower of Babel. So you got the black, the white ethnicity, and Asian. Because over time, when somebody lives near the equator for thousands of years, their skin darkens. And when we go out to get a tan, we're trying to make our skin look healthier by darkening our skin. It's brown skin. It's all brown and beige. It's all a shade of brown. We're all a shade of brown. All right? So that's not the issue. The issue is culture, though. If you're in a culture that was purposely set up and had Democrats dumping drugs on your culture because you were black or because you were poor, white, poor neighborhoods. But the Democrats, in my view, purposely dumped drugs on black folks after they made them illegal and created a slave system that way and promoted gangs. And gangs, there's black on black slavery through gangs who believe in the gang life and drug cartels and the people killing each other over $5. That's extreme slavery. So, but they're taught hustle for the money, and that America stole white Americans, and they're taught they pretend it's Republicans who stole property and everything from black folks by making them slaves. But it's the opposite. It's the Democrats who did it. It's the Republicans are the one who ended that. The Republicans Party was never for slavery. They moved up north and got away from all that to the Northwest and Minnesota, where they were still seeking freedom, and the governments that chased the people who escaped Europe and first came here to get freedom from a government who was hanging them for reading the Bible, they continued trying to stay away from the slavery and everything. Those governments came here to try to stop them from being free, and that's part of where slavery, they brought the slaves, a lot of those governments. But first of all, Africa had the most slaves to sell. So a lot of the African slave masters who were selling slaves have come here. Nobody's ever talked about that. And a lot of them may represent, whether it's spiritually or not, I don't care if somebody's an ancestor of a slave master. It shouldn't matter. That if you've chosen Christ and you reject that kind of lifestyle, then that's not what you support. I'm out of time, but though I gotta go. But I don't feel safe around any cultures, frankly, in some ways. So I feel isolated around some, and that some just aren't realistic. But I would say it varies. It just varies. But I gotta go.